wondered how AI is shaping the way we connect online, or why business in general messaging is becoming the future of customer interaction? And let's be real, what's actually going on with Instagram's algorithm? Well, today we're getting all of these answers from someone who's right at the heart of it all. Meet Faris Akkad, everyone, the Regional Director of MENA. Faris, absolute pleasure having you here with us on Paradigm and on Entrepreneur Middle East. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
How are you today? How
I'm
was your
good.
day so
I'm
far?
good.
All good?
All good. Busy, but good.
You're comfortable to be interrogated now?
Yeah, it's part of the job.
Perfect. So, Regional Director of MENA, I think that sounds super cool already. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it is pretty cool. I feel privileged every day to be really at the cutting edge of what's happening on human interaction. You know, I've always in my career tried to or gravitated towards what I think is the most relevant. And I've been lucky enough now to find myself really at the cross section of relevance, both with what's happening in the company, but also what's happening in the region, which is also very exciting.
Have you ever seen yourself being in digital ever since you were younger, or?
There was no digital when I was younger. I think the closest to digital was my Atari. Look, communication, yes. I think communication has always fascinated me, and my segue, although engineer by training, but my segue was actually media. I've always been fascinated by the power of TV, by the power of storytelling to shape society and culture.
Speech, yeah.
And before MENA, I was in media, in TV, and I've seen how the preference for communication and storytelling shifted, but ultimately the power of storytelling remained the same. And now as the two converged into a digital platform, I found myself also gravitating towards that.
Right. Would you say you had any role models in your life growing up?
Many, I think my parents, my siblings. I've had mentors in my career that have played a key role in jolting me, helping me see some blind spots. No, I constantly seek counsel, and I don't think there's one person that kind of encapsulates it all. But I think like a personal board is always a good idea.
Yeah, it's always a good one. So tell me, how does your typical day at MENA look like? If you have a typical day.
Well, there isn't a typical day per se, and let me start by saying it's one of those roles that it becomes a lifestyle. It's not you're the meta guy in every setting, in every
meta guy.
Yeah, and it's a lifestyle. It's a privileged lifestyle, but it is a lifestyle. I don't know. I usually try to start fairly early. I like to work out, get kind of exercise beginning of the day. It depends if I'm traveling or not, because I travel a lot, but generally that's a routine. And then usually the first kick of the day is just catching up with what happened overnight in the US or Europe, because different time zones.
You have to be updated at every hour.
Yeah, but especially that morning hour or two, just within the company, the news cycle of what's happening in the region, globally, kind of go over the plan for the day.
Update yourself, yeah.
Yeah. And especially recently, because there's so much news. You might wake up and your whole agenda is off whack.
Right.
And then it's meetings. We do a lot of meetings, and meetings. We start with the MENA meetings, and we go to Europe, which kick off in the early afternoon, and then evening time. There's always a couple of calls, probably closing with some California calls, which are 12-hour time difference. So 8 p.m., 9 p.m., etc. This time of year, Dubai is always social obligations, openings, events, stuff of the sort. So it's a fairly busy, intense kind of, and I don't know if you could say like a typical lifestyle. I think what exasperates the intensity is also the region. There's so much happening in the region now in this time of year.
Here.
that like it's a question of just prioritizing what you're going to eliminate from your schedule. So it becomes quite intense. It slows down a bit in summer, but this time of year is it's all good, but it's crazy intense.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I feel like most of this podcast is very much going to be focused on AI and how that's kind of changing Meta at this point. And I wanted to ask you to kick that off. What kind of excites you the most about AI in this region? And then we're going to slowly connect that to how it's changing Meta in general.
Yeah, look, AI, this is the buzzword that I think is gone around so much, which is exciting. But one of the dangers of this buzzword is that people become a bit numb to it and the potential consequences of it. This will be the most transformational thing that will happen in our lifetime. Potentially, if you zoom out at a glacier level over history, and you look at the spikes in human evolution that happened from the industrial age or the information age, which transformed how people live, what they do for living, how they interact, the social classes. I think this will eclipse all of that. So let's start out by saying that, we are the generation that's going to know what it is before AI and what's after AI. And it's in these big shifts, that's where huge opportunities are made. That's where people make tons of money, lose tons of money. New industries are born, and so to be at the precipice of this is incredibly exciting. The scale of this change is being received in different ways in different regions, and I think the region is very much leaning forward for many reasons. I think we have very young demographics in the region that are very fertile ground for this to work. We have very good connectivity. We have non-politicized the decision making. So basically, regulation on AI. I mean, take the UAE or Saudi or others. UAE has a minister of AI.
Exactly.
Whereas Europe is a lot more conservative when it comes to what's allowed. Yeah. We have abundance of energy, which is a very important substack in AI, which nobody talks about, but I think a lot of it is going to come to.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, people look, when you do one of those large language model searches, every search, every question it takes almost it ranges between one full charge of an iPhone to 7 full iPhone charges each search. So that's incredible amount of
crazy
energy that will be consumed. Yeah. And it generates about a kettle worth of heat. So you gotta generate the information, then you gotta cool it off. And so this is a very important substack that I don't think gets talked about a lot. I think
not at all.
But it is as incredibly critical for the scaling of AI. And where the region is, obviously we have a lot of energy. So I think that's also another reason. And then last but not least is obviously the funds. The funds
always important.
It's expensive to train these models. It's expensive to produce these chips, and you need to have deep pockets to be able to do so. And this coincides very well with the socioeconomic shift that the region is going through. So I think all of that makes it very attractive. The region doesn't have a deep academic maybe pool in this space, but it's the most attractive location now for many people. There. Well, people are relocating, right? They're choosing to be here. These people with deep expertise and these academic things, you're right, will get there. But I think in the time being, it's more the approach is like, let's welcome everybody from all over the world that is interested in working here and doing this type of work. So I think this combination makes the whole thing very exciting.
Right. So tell me, how will it change the way we interact with Meta?
So look, it'll change the way you interact, period. Our play is to say, look, we have today, we're the probably the biggest communication platform in the history of humanity. We have close to 4 billion people who come see us every month, over 3.5 to see us every day. And so we could be the segue to that. I think messaging is going to be, probably one of the most logical area. This is how people are engaging today.
Mm-hmm.
And today with our agent AI, which is available on all our platforms, WhatsApp, Instagram,
Yes, I've
Messenger,
tested it already.
That reduces so much friction of having to download another app. So it's already in your app, which most people have. It's free. So no friction there. We've combined multiple features or functionalities to offer them for free. So you're able to search for text, you're able to generate images, and you're able to animate those images. And all of that is free. And these are different apps usually that are for pay. And last but not least, and I think probably most important, is that it's an open platform. Open source means others can develop on it. And to ensure the representation and addressing the problems of the world, you have to basically do it in partnership with the world and allow people to be able to develop on your platform, to address bespoke issues and create this competitiveness that can accelerate that growth. In a very, very near future, you will have an AI agent that will interact with 1,000 other AI agents and will be able to speak your voice and preferences in a way that in some cases better represents and more eloquently than you can. And I think
that's scary though.
It is, if not done, checked. But I think there are so many benefits to that, to free you up 100%. To do what you can do best, rather than tie you down with
and waste time on
mundane, tactical type of things. If you can have a personal assistant that is able to take care of a lot of that for you, imagine the capacity you can have to optimize on something else.
Right. I mean, as long as we don't go from annoying email scams to annoying WhatsApp scams after this.
No, I think our plan with WhatsApp is on a couple of fronts. One is click to message, which a lot of businesses are taking advantage of.
Yeah.
Today we see most consumers prefer to engage over chat, particularly WhatsApp, than any other channel. We see this as a reflection of also what's happening in society. I think today, if I were to meet someone and ask for their phone number, I think the appropriate thing would be for me to message them before calling them. If somebody just calls me, and these...
You're immediately like, okay,
yeah, like it's a bit invasive, right? And so the same way with consumers, they want to be able to engage at all times in any environment via text. So that's working really well. And then the other areas of monetization will be being able to be targeted by marketing messages, sure, but you have to opt into that. And you can always opt out, and you can block vendors. And it has to be with vendors that you opted in. So obviously vendors that know you and you know them, and hopefully there's some value in that interaction. But more importantly, we're going to do a lot of monetization through what we call utility, which is when you're able to engage with a business to conduct business. So I'm able to, let's say Aramex uses it, and they tell me, look, you have a package. Would you like it delivered? Would you like to pay for it online? Yeah. So I can do a lot of this work before I receive this package. I can be notified of flight changes. I can choose my seat. So I think that is actually completely in line with what consumers want to do. Right. It's not invasive at all. If my Emirates flight is late, I want to know, and I want to be able to say, hey, no, this is not going to work for my connection, and I want to be able to deal with it on the go,
rather than be too late.
Not on a phone call.
Yeah.
So I think if you tell me the ideal scenario for this type of interaction, if you ask, I would say 100 customers, 90 would say, send me a WhatsApp, let's deal with it now. So these are the type of case studies that we're seeing happen. And they're just very convenient. And, Hala Taxi now launched that you can order a taxi on Hala Taxi. You don't have to have an app. And remember, Dubai is getting tens of millions of tourists. Not all of them will have Careem or even, Uber. But for Hala Taxi, like if you can send a WhatsApp and get a taxi, not only has it increased customer satisfaction, increased number of orders, but we've also noticed that after a few orders, they actually do download the app. So it doesn't cannibalize that. It just makes it
easier to connect to that business.
Easier to connect and connect at a more intuitive human level.
Yeah. It's crazy the amount of people that I give Career Maps because they don't know how to get the taxis in Dubai. So I think this is a game changer. They don't know that they're doing it. That's great. So would you say, or would you hope that, businesses are going to go more into messaging and replace that traditional?
Look, I hope so.
Routine?
Not just, obviously for our sake, but I think for their own sake. That eventually messaging will be the segue to how AI agents will engage.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But messaging today is text. It could be audio, video. It will evolve. But I think thinking of engaging with a consumer through some sort of
Mm-hmm.
agent is something that every business needs to be
Mm-hmm.
thinking about, and not just on a B2C level. I've seen, Coca-Cola use it in Africa to engage with their distributors. So this is basically their Slack, if you may. This is
Mm-hmm.
how they update them. They send mass communication, etc., and get orders. So you need to be thinking of how can I engage at scale, regardless of what business you're in, and regardless of what platform you choose or how
Mm-hmm.
you. But I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a point where you as a consumer will have an agent that's only able to engage with other agents.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's inefficient to do it any other way. And if you're that one seller of X that doesn't have that, then whoever has that will do it more
Right.
and at scale.
Right.
So I think it's prudent to start thinking. And unlike the other economic revolutions that we talked about that took years and the impact, was a bit kind of lagging, we're counting in weeks. Like this is going to be so eminent so quickly that some people will be caught unprepared. I think if you haven't played with a large language model, it's like being illiterate.
Right. Especially the older generations. Like
Yes.
I did go back, let's say, to my home country now, and my grandma always calls her taxi by calling the phone number and waiting online. And I'm like, let me just download you. It's the Kareem version in Serbian. I download. She's like, the taxi will come now. And I'm like, yes, grandma. You could also call him. You can message him. It's about educating. It's about,
It's about educating, but it's also about the platforms to be inclusive. And this is what we try to do.
Exactly.
The reason WhatsApp is so successful is that the team is militant about keeping it simple. It doesn't have a sandwich. It doesn't have a drop down of things. Literally, you can give it to anyone, and within minutes they figure out how to use it. And so it's about creating that balance by between keeping it simple and maximizing the utility.
Right.
But it's on everyone to at least lean in to learn, because it might not be your fault that this happened, but it will be your problem.
Right.
When you can't communicate or you can't transact in a certain way. So I would urge everyone to at least experiment, because this will happen very quickly.
Right. And speak to your grandparents and your parents and teach them how to do it. It's on us. Exactly. Yeah. It's definitely on us. So tell me a little bit about ads and that section on Instagram. Will all of us be more, prominent to the introduction of immersive ad experiences? Just give me a little overview on that section.
So look, I think ads have evolved quite significantly over the past couple of years. And they will continue to do so because it's much more competitive to get attention. Mm-hmm. If you go back to the day where you had like the billboard and you were kind of forced to see it, and then you had the newspaper and you had the radio, you had the TV. All of these were very captive audience, right? Like TV, especially in most free-to-air satellite regions, you sit there and in an hour of content, you get anything from 20 to 30 minutes of ads. Mm-hmm. So half the amount is advertising. And you sat there and went through it and remembered the jingles of every,
I mean, in some countries it's still the case.
In some countries it's still the case, but eroding very quickly.
Yeah.
Why? Who wants to sit through 30 minutes of ads in a 1 hour piece of content? As a matter of fact, now what the consumer is saying, who wants to sit through on a 1 hour piece of content to start with? I'd rather have
a 3-second pop-up.
Yeah, like 50 of those and be happy and get my content binge. And so the consumer expectation of ads have gone up, and the brand's expectation of ads have gone up. So a lot of the innovation that has come in the ad space has really come to satisfy both of these stakeholders for us. So what does that mean? It means ads have to be more than ads. They have to be informative. They have to be entertaining. They have to have a very clear call to action.
Personalized as well.
And personalized and timely. So, that means everything from timing of the ads, the concept, the creative, the target audience, and when you show it to that target audience and how frequently becomes essential.
Mm-hmm.
And we are privileged to have really, been at it for a while, fine-tuned it to a point where, especially when it comes to what we call direct response or lower funnel type of advertising. So upper funnel is awareness. A billboard is upper funnel. You see it, you're aware of the brand, but there's no, you're far from the action of purchasing or transacting. Lower funnel means you're at that point. So which means we're very good at presenting an ad for you with the highest probability for you to engage. And that can only happen if we have a good understanding of your user behavior, and we have a good psychometric type of analysis of you. And a lot of what people say, Instagram can hear me or whatever, is just...
How does that happen? Because it can't.
Because you're very predictable. I mean, that's what happened. We all are.
Once I went to an event and I saw 4 different girls in the same dress, which I also saw on my Instagram. And I was like, okay, Instagram knows how to do it.
I think there's, it's quite a sophisticated algorithm. And I'll give you also an interesting fact. People think, well, my Instagram shows this. Actually, Instagram is also multiple algorithms, which means your Reels selection is different than your discovery, is different than your feed, is different than your stories. And each of these algorithms is trying to optimize for your behavior in that form.
Yeah,
so that's how sophisticated it is. It's not that if you always watch sports reels that it will optimize for your stories to be sports related. No, because when you
test you in a different funnel and see.
Well, when you watch stories, you prefer to see, let's say, your friends. When you watch reels, you like to say sports, and they'll operate independently and constantly try to test to find that sweet spot.
And your discovery is fashion, maybe.
And then there's also introducing you to new concepts that we think you might do well, given how others have done. Now, all of this ultimately gets us to predict fairly accurately behaviors that you will do even before you're conscious of them. So you might always go on vacation a certain time of year or within a certain gap, or the algorithm figures that you're ready for vacation, and you'll start seeing Bali ads. And these Bali ads are a trigger that ultimately is based on a trend.
Yeah.
And then you react to them. So this is why it seems like, it's reading your mind, or if you heard you, because usually we subconsciously start doing certain things when we're brewing on a certain concept.
Right. It's crazy to think that something such as an algorithm can reach such specific and personalized points. But tell me, does AI hyper-personalize all of that? How do you engage AI into this now, into ads?
So look, one of the main things that AI can do very effectively is recognize different patterns. So if I notice that if you have coffee in the morning and then you don't have lunch, you're grumpy in the afternoon. But that's one pattern.
But it recognizes in a much faster way, right?
And with many variables. I read that was actually when you don't have coffee in the morning, but it's sunny and you don't have lunch, you're not grumpy. If you don't have coffee in the morning and you look at your phone and so it can do billions of these very quickly. And so it recognizes the ultimate pattern. Right? It gets to a point where it's like, with as many variables as possible, this is the most likely outcome. So yes, it will be hyper-personalized. Hyper-personalized to a point where, like I said, it will demonstrate almost predictive behavior. And depending on the setup, and this is why I say, good, bad, it could also predict things or advise you on things that are good for you. You might be able to, you might be asking for a recipe, and the AI will be like, this is how you make apple pie. But remember, you are diabetic. and so I would recommend using, I don't know, sweetener instead of sugar, or skipping apple pie completely, or how about some of these healthy snacks? That's where AI starts tying in some variables that you might not consider, or subconsciously you're not considering, but it will highlight them to you. And I think, it's about how you use the information, but ultimately, if it's instructed for your well-being, etc., it will flag that, look, or, hey, you've had apple pie last week and you're having it again.
Yeah.
And if you would continue doing that, here are some consequences. It's that kind of predictive behavior that you could choose to ignore, but I think is helpful to know.
Do companies ever approach you to kind of buy off this information, or you keep it extremely confidential and locked up and it's only used for Meta?
Yeah, I think this is a good question, because there's a misconception about, how data is used.
There's a lot of myths, yeah.
Yeah, it's like we don't sell data, or a company comes and says, here's some files of data of people. It doesn't work like that. What happens is you come and you target a certain segment, or you have a certain, let's say, outcome desired, right? I want to increase my female customers in this age segment in this region.
What do you advise?
And how do you optimize such a campaign? And how much would it cost for each one of them to see my ad twice? And maybe you say, actually, after they saw it twice, I've noticed by the third time they make a purchase. So how can they see it 3 times? So this whole testing, what happens is you engage with the platform by setting up your goal, and then the platform recommends a campaign and it runs it. At no point do you know that you've reached John or Paul.
Okay.
You've reached customer A, customer B, customer C that fit your profile.
Right.
So there's never an exchange of personal information. There is an execution of a desire that optimizes those customer profiles, and also, by the way, optimizes platform. It'll say, look, I'm going to show it to John in the morning on Facebook, in the afternoon on Instagram, and then now also on WhatsApp if they opt in. But to you, it's results. It's input, it's results. Right. It's never individual information. And therefore, obviously, all this information is very protected. What people in the past have done, they've tried to weaponize the platform a little bit, and now we even have safeguards for that. So even when you're reaching out with your campaigns, we also have safeguards that these campaigns are legitimate and in line with our standards.
Right. So it's not about MENA, it's about MENA's needs and wants, basically.
Exactly. It's about results, right? Like our team will sit with you and say, what is your desired result? And sometimes we even, we've had many kind of asks like, I want to have a billion likes. Like, why? And we advise on outcome, because ultimately we want to see businesses see results. If we feel you're doing something without an outcome, it's our duty to inform you that this is, if you're doing it for notoriety, great. But if you're doing it for business outcome, we recommend a certain approach.
Right. Do you see all of these illegal, follower buying companies as a threat? Or do they kind of break that algorithm that you're so focused on, placing on people? Are you like in court with these guys usually, or you don't care? They're minor.
I'll tell you that they're not a risk in terms of skewing the algorithm, because we regularly do these swoops and remove bot accounts. So, I get a lot of calls like, oh, my account just dropped a couple 100,000. Like, they're probably bots. Whether you bought them or they were given to you, but they're probably bots that were eliminated. So that's not a worry. And then the optimization.
Do you get these calls?
Yeah, all sorts of calls. But the optimization is not just on followers. I think we look at shares, comments, engagement, and that's hard to fake. So ultimately, we're looking at many inputs to optimize where these ads are shown. The biggest risk of these type of operations is actually the consumer, the users, like the influencers or the people who buy, because you're spending money, you're really getting no result, and ultimately sometimes putting your account at risk to be flagged and taken down, etc. So no, not a concern, but I think I always advise people, understand who your segment is or where you're doing well, what you're targeting. Build a small but dedicated audience worth much more than a random audience that is full of like bots and people are not going to engage. Why? Ultimately, there are 3 parties in this event. You have the creator, you have the business, and you have the platform. The platform is interested in everybody being happy, everybody making money, etc. The advertiser who starts this whole dance decides, I'm going to run a campaign and I'm going to use a creator to get results. If they do that and they don't get results, what is results? Results are like, I give you a campaign, this jewelry you're wearing, you're going to wear it, you're going to talk about it, people are going to buy it. If people don't buy it because there's nobody you're talking to or you're talking to bots, that dance is not going to last very long. And so the brand will try once, try twice, and then say, you know, I'm done. If you had a small but captive audience and they see results, they don't care how big that audience is. That what they're seeing is the outcome, and the outcome is positive. And I think that's what's missed sometimes with many influencers is like, you know, my reach, my following. Are you able to execute on campaigns effectively against your target audience? And that means you have to understand your target audience. You have to do A/B testing, test what works for them and doesn't. Look at all of your the health of your account. Do you have any flags? You know, did you try different creatives for different audiences? Have you tried different languages? Posting at different times of the day? Do you have a case study of a campaign you did with a brand which resulted in fantastic results?
Right.
I think that's a new kind of creator that brands want to deal with, right? Like someone who can have a smart conversation.
As we said, play some brain cells into it. It's not that.
And this is the reason why you see some celebrities have done very well in their transition to social and others haven't. Because simply posting a picture here and there and not engaging and not being authentic is just not going to cut it. It's just a different audience. It's not like TV.
Too much competition at this point. You can't.
Yeah.
You got to be unique. Tell me, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions, let's say, around Meta? I had that question come through a lot because we did write on our Instagram if there's any audience questions that want to come through. And a lot of the people wrote about misconceptions. We did speak about some of them, but is there anything else that, you know, you would like to mention?
Yeah, I think, look, the one about data is a good one. You know, people think we sell data, you know, 2 kilos of data.
You read our thoughts.
Yeah, no. You know, we sell audiences, but not data. We sell attention. I think the other thing now with the discussion in AI is that, or even the metaverse. We're trying to build alone this future, and we are deciding how it would look. And
metaverse.
Yeah, and people say, you know, what will I be able to do, and will I not be able to do on WhatsApp? And I think what's missed is that we provide the platform, we provide the infrastructure. Our belief in open source is to allow others to build. And there's a very, very serious philosophical discussion here that I think everybody needs to have an opinion on, right? Once everyone understands the scale of change that AI will bring, then the idea of open source and closed source becomes a lot more relevant. If this is going to define how my future and the future of my kids will look like, then I want to have an input into that. And I don't want that, you know, today the argument is closed source keeps it in the hand of capable and responsible people, right? But for a decision that's so pervasive in everybody's life, I think everybody should have some sort of input.
We still have control of it on. It's not like
but
AI
I
is
think, but the
taking
closed
away.
source is saying, look, you can't develop for it. We decide what to develop, and we'll let you know, right? And this is going to be the kind of, we decide what the norm will be. With open source, we're saying, look, you can develop, and people can choose how they engage. And I think this element of choice is quite critical for a system that's going to do so much.
For sure. Especially users are very spoiled these days.
Yes. So I think this is an important one, that we're going to do this in collaboration with others. I think there's also sometimes a misunderstanding of the scale of operations of Meta. You know, like where people say, oh, I have this problem or I have that problem, and it took, you know, and there's always room for improvement. But, you know, when you have 4 billion, half the world as your customers monthly, is just the idea of that volume is of how many happy birthdays a day and how many messages. And, you know, when I look at messaging in the region, where it's growing at more than 500% year on year. People open their WhatsApp more than 150 times a day. I mean, that kind of engagement level is so high that the best way to look at AI is how we use it to manage our operation.
Right.
Most of that heavy lifting is done through machine learning and AI, and we have a very lean team to make that happen.
How many people work in Meta in the region?
About 100 plus.
Okay, that's not that much.
No, not that much at all.
I thought it was going to be way more.
Well, for me, I mean, Middle East, Africa is about 75 countries, 1.5 billion or so people. Obviously, it has a lot of challenges in terms of geopolitics and 200 languages, 2,000 dialects. Remember, we operate at the very social fabric of every society. So we have to be kind of deep in it. So to be able to do that at scale, with the efficacy that we're able to do it is also quite impressive and a showcase of the power of technology.
It's exactly. You have a lot of it to support you. Second question that the audience wanted me to ask you is that many entrepreneurs in MENA rely heavily on Meta's platforms for business growth. What advice would you give to startups looking to maximize their reach? Since we're Entrepreneur Magazine.
Yeah, of course. Look,
it was a very logical question.
For starters, I think absolutely use the platform. I think if you are a startup and you're doing anything but digital, you have to question why. For starters, and if I'm an investor and I see someone spending on non-digital as a startup, I would really kind of question, because I need to see an ROI on every amount. And if you're trying to make a product market fit, I need to see unit economics. I need to see how much does it cost you to sell this piece and how much you're making from this piece, including marketing, including overhead. Because what I see a lot of startups here, like we're making money, but then the full cost is not built in, and they're basically losing money on unit economics, and that's how most businesses run out of cash. And this can only be done in digital, and this is why I think familiarizing yourself by running campaigns, doing A/B testing, understanding your audience, getting insights, using the platform not just to sell, but also to understand consumer interests, how you upsell, cross-sell, what new product you should be selling, where your product could have potential beyond your existing markets. All of this can only be done on the platform.
Yeah.
And I think most people don't invest the time to understand, or they farm it out to some agency, which is okay. But I think as a business owner,
you need to know.
There's nothing more important.
Yeah, you need to know how to sell.
Because this is not just
digital
marketing or packaging like it used to be. This is product insight. This is R&D. This is customer service, customer feedback. This is your whole strategy.
Also, where your startup is going to be in the next 5 years. You'll need to eventually get there.
And any startup that doesn't have a digital strategy starting nowadays should question the concept, because this is where we're heading. I think your digital storefront becomes more important than anything else.
Right.
Manage your cash flow carefully. I think infuse technical expertise early on in the company, and think of scaling, leveraging technology. I think what happens is a lot of startups maybe don't do the right investments and patch things up as they grow, and then it's become major pain points moving forward. It also, what is not logical sometimes is that when I come to value a startup, people value the processes, the infrastructure, the proprietary technology. When startups grow but they have nothing, the investment becomes, what am I buying? What am I investing? And I think that's sometimes missed. Even if you're selling and it's working, you're what's proprietary to you? I think when people invest or buy, they want to buy proprietary things. So if you've built this automated system of doing things, I think it makes you a lot more valuable too.
100%. What would you say are your top 3 pieces of advice on leadership, since you are one of the most prominent leaders here in an extremely important company?
Look, I think...
or everyone just has their own style. And you have
yes,
to
but
know
there are
yourself.
some things that I've seen a pattern in. Grit,
Okay.
Just showing up every day, showing up, being consistent is key. Communication. I think one of the most important skills that have helped me and I've seen in others is that leaders usually are effective communicators, different styles, but very effective communicators, orally and in a presentation style, etc. Even public speaking, a lot of misconceptions. Like I do a lot of public speaking. I'm quite an introvert in person, but people ask me all the time, like, you're a decent public speaker. How? And it's a skill. It's like martial arts. It's just, if you're an extrovert, doesn't mean you're a good public speaker.
Or you've trained.
No, you practice. And there are things you can do that help you that are not. I think I take an acting class, take improv, take in addition to Toastmasters and those things, and practice.
And also believe what you're saying. I feel like that's the most important thing. If you know your product and if you personalize it to yourself, it's so easy to stand in front of, even if it's 1 or a million people, you're going to prove your point, right?
Yeah. So grit, communication, and then you touched on it. Just know your stuff. If you're going to talk about something, just try to really answer your own questions before you preach.
Right. If I can give you a time machine and you can go all the way back in time, what would you tell a younger version of yourself? The 10-year-old Ferris.
I think I'll be,
is there anything you would change or advise yourself, or?
I worry about saying you would change because, obviously there's things that happen in life that I would, wish they didn't happen. But I think also they led to beautiful things that happened that I don't want to ever change. So it's too complex for me to be able to pinpoint a point that I could change that wouldn't have an effect on everything else. And I think, in my 40s now, I've been blessed. I've had a fantastic journey. I'm living in an era.
Are you content now?
You're never content. I think you always have the drive and hunger. But yes, of course, I'm incredibly blessed. I've had the opportunity to do incredible things. I'm at work. I'm healthy. I've my family went through some tough times, but it's in a good place. When you look at what's happening around the world, I think I definitely have to count my blessings. So I'll tell my 10-year-old self, look, it's going to be okay.
It's all going to be.
It's going to be okay. Just try to worry less and do more, and it's going to be okay.
Right, Ferris. I think our interview is coming to an end now, but there's a quick meta fire game that I've prepared for you that we're going to go through. It's very quick. I'm basically going to give you 30 seconds, and you have to answer as many questions as possible. All right. We're going to have the timer. Okay. Your 30 seconds starts now. Instagram or Facebook?
Instagram.
Metaverse in 5 years, game changer or still evolving?
The new future.
The first social media platform you ever used?
MySpace.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm old.
Oh, wow. AI and social media, exciting or terrifying?
Exciting.
I knew you would say that. One word to describe Meta's future?
Bright.
Instagram stories or reels?
Used to be stories, but now I'm much more of a reels guy.
Yeah, we're all becoming real.
Yeah.
Real lovers. AI generated content or user generated content?
User generated AI content.
You cannot make stuff.
It's I think
You're cheating.
I think they can coexist. They can coexist.
True. Work from home or office?
Office.
Metaverse or reality?
An enhanced reality.
That's reality. All right, I'm going to put you on the spot a bit now. 3 questions. What year did Instagram launch? Remember?
04? No.
A bit later.
Yeah. 14? I don't know.
2010. But you're right about 14. It was Facebook. When did Facebook get acquired? WhatsApp? It was 2014, yeah. And what year did Meta announce the rebrand from Facebook? That was recent, though.
Yeah, that was, let's see,
oh God, those COVID times.
2020?
21, yeah.
21,
it was there.
Yeah.
I feel like you kind of knew before because you were preparing it and then... Okay. Well, that was it. You've got one out of the two. That's okay.
Yeah, that's not great.
That's fine. That's fine. But thank you so much for coming today. Honestly,
pleasure.
it's an absolute pleasure having you. I hope to many more interviews with you, and we wish you the best of luck. And we'll stay tuned to everything that MENA is doing in the future.
Thank you for
so
having
much.
me.
Thank you. Well, guys, that was it. We've covered so much from the impact of AI to what's next for Meta and the future of digital interactions. And I think it's very clear that things are moving extremely fast and there's so much more opportunity ahead of us. Biggest takeaways from this podcast, I think the future is it's all about personalization. It's all about that immersive experience and obviously AI driven innovation. But it's also, I think, important to keep things real and making sure that tech actually helps us connect in a meaningful way rather than, just exchange those things that we usually love to do. So if you love this chat, make sure to subscribe to Paradigm for more awesome conversations with industry leaders. And you know the drill by now. Keep evolving, keep innovating, and keep reshaping the future. With you was MENA Vucic.